here. Here we go. Now there we are. This folks normally starts with like that slide up here full and some music, but Dan and I are just kind of standing by, and we'll tell you why we're just standing by in just a minute. But to make this formal, Jaggernauts, here we go. All right. Hello. Welcome to another beautiful morning up north and coverage of the race for Wisconsin's next governor. Coming up, a live edition of the Wisconsin Politics Group Chat. It is Thursday, August 13th, 2026, 82 days until the November 3rd election. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation area is here. Kate Duffy from Motherhood for Good will be here any moment now. And then we'll get started on the Wisconsin Politics Group Chat, which normally would include Dr. Kristin Lyerly, but the doctor is finally following medical advice and resting, Dan, after the hip replacement that she had yesterday.
Well,
I thought the way she was texting, it's just going crazy. I'm just like, wow, this is quite the recovery. And this morning she's just out. So
yeah, well, it was unbelievable. She was up on the stream with us, closing down the Recombobulation area
till
into
almost
the wee hours of the night, waiting for Central Count in Milwaukee. And then she was up the next day, and she mentioned this in the stream. She's like, yeah, I have to be at the doctor's office, whatever, at like 5 a.m. And so, Kristin, shout out to you.
Yes,
absolute legend on the stream on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning.
She was, and deserves a little time to recover. God knows we all need to do that. So like I said, Kate will be here in a moment. Brewers got swept in San Diego, 4-3 in 11 innings yesterday. They are now in Los Angeles. 4 games with the Dodgers starting at 9:10 tonight. And Dan, I obviously didn't get to watch much of it with recent events, but they have just historically had trouble with West Coast road trips. And I mean, every team travels, so hopefully it's mostly coincidence, but their West Coast games have not been great the past 2-3 seasons, it feels like.
No, they always struggle out there. I'm just like, I have not been able to watch any Brewers over the last month because.
Well, let's not kid ourselves. You're all Bucks. You're waiting for that to start.
I have become more of a NBA person than a baseball person for sure. That's my sport of choice. But I do I do watch. Once the NBA Finals is over, I'll pivot. I'll start watching the Brewers, and I live fairly close to American Family Field, so there's always a lot of energy on this side of town when the Brewers are good, and so I'll be getting into it. And I was at the game I was actually at the game on Sunday with the kids and all of that, so that was a lot of fun too.
Was that one that was a win on Sunday?
That was
right?
That was the what was it, the 10th inning?
Yeah, that was a walk-off win.
The kids didn't last until the 10th inning, but it was
no, they rarely do.
Yeah, it was like us and a bunch of other parents walking out to the parking lot in like the 8th inning or whatever. So fun.
But they now have that whole new playground area, which we took the younger grandkids to a couple of weeks back, and that's a nice little feature there. I appreciate having that they're thinking of the young parents and grandparents while they're there.
Absolutely.
Let's see. So yeah, they will play the Dodgers tonight at 9:10. And one more bit of housekeeping from my end of things. It's Thursday, so there will be a new newsletter that I'll be putting together today. Sign up for it over at UpNorthNews.wi.com. Have a question of the week. What should the question of the week be? Like, should polling companies ever come back to Wisconsin ever again? Or something like that? I don't know.
I have so many. How could you even narrow it down to one after everything that happened? And it's just like, maybe just, how are you doing?
I thought about that too. I did. What I want to go back to, because I don't remember the answer off the top of my head, but 2 weeks ago, my question was about the winning margin. Would it be because that's when Francesca Hong had this 20-point lead? So we're like, will it be a big win? Got kind of in the middle. Will it be less than a percentage point? And it turned out to be less than a percentage point. So that question of the week in the newsletter actually worked out pretty well. So Kate's here now. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Where are you at this morning?
I am in Iowa.
Oh, that's right. Right. Somebody could not be part of the Unity breakfast and all the other things because, I mean,
not that I was invited.
When you got to have a corn dog, you got to have a corn dog. And so what is happening out at the Iowa State Fair?
Well, I don't know yet. I went to an event last night, but I am going to the fair after this.
Mhm.
We are meeting at the Butter Cow. Um, and I don't know. I'm going to see what it's all about. I think we're going to have some time with Josh Turk today, who's running for U.S. Senate and is amazing. Rob Sand is here talking to people. So, yeah, we'll see what's going on. It's a totally different vibe here. They're
Mhm.
just trying to get some Democrats on the ballot.
Yeah, and I feel like with Rob Sand, they really feel like they've got. I know it sounds like Texas and Lucy and the football. It always feels like they're on the verge of something. But in Iowa, it really does seem like they might be on the verge of something there. So I'll be curious to hear what all you learned today as you're talking to
Yeah.
folks. All right, well, let's get the Wisconsin politics group chat started again. Dr. Kristin Lyerly not able to join us after becoming that much closer to a bionic woman with all of her surgeries, but she'll tell us all about it next week. So what I'm about to say to kick things off used to be a punchline, and now it is just a statement of fact. I'm getting too old for this shit. There's no other way to do this. It is. I mean, first off, I got to give these two credit, and Kristin, if she were here, they did an election night live stream that can only be described as epic. Thinking they were going to wrap things up by 11 p.m. when Milwaukee County said their absentee ballots had been counted and they were on the verge of announcing things, and then they didn't. There was computer error. There was human error. The next thing you know, those three are on till, what was it, 1:30 in the morning that you signed off, and racking up viewers because they were like the only elections result thing still going. They wanted to quit, but they saw the counter keep going up and up and up, and like, well, we're building an audience. Let's go, kids. And y'all did. So the first
we
question
were
has to
at
be
that point.
yeah. How are you feeling now, Kate?
I'm tired. I haven't really. Well, okay. So we were up so late, and then I like had to do a few things, but then I spent a lot of the time in the car yesterday, and then went straight to something. So I haven't like been online much. I haven't like read any articles. I just open my phone and I see like takes about Wisconsin from literally everybody I've never seen before from all over the country. I was very glad today that I got served a video about a loon that was seen that was very rare in Wisconsin. I'm like, oh, thank God, a different type of Wisconsin video in my feed. But no, I'm feeling good. It's just, I think it's going to be good. The Unity breakfast photos warmed my heart, and I don't know. What else did I miss? What did I miss yesterday being offline? I'm a little like I'm flying blind here.
I don't think you missed much. I did go down for the Unity breakfast that thankfully was pushed to a Unity brunch. I stayed with an old college friend down in Madison. Was working at his place till 2 in the morning. Dan was working a little bit later than that, and I had that 7 a.m. wake up that I haven't had since I was running for Congress in 2012, where you wake up and you literally have no idea where you are. I don't know what town I was in. I knew nothing for like the first 60 seconds and finally recognized the guest room curtains. I was like, oh, I'm at Kevin's house. Okay. It was crazy. But then to get to go to that Unity brunch where, I mean, talk about a mob of press people, network and otherwise, we're all gathered there. And it was really something to see so many folks there. Of course, there was, Josh Call and Sarah Godlewski, and, some of the former candidates. Francesca Hong was there as well. And, it was just a nice united front. And David Crowley talked to me afterwards, along with the rest of the press, and we'll get into that. But I guess before I get too far ahead of things, we should go back an hour or two, Dan, because David Crowley first delivered some remarks in Milwaukee before coming to Madison. And you being the trooper you were, after going to bed at like 4 a.m., you got up for it.
Yeah, I'm a crazy person, but so was everyone else there. So yeah, I was up. I was so wired after the live stream still that I could not calm down. So I was just like, well, I'll just write a story, and I posted that quick and whatever else. And so I think I finally fell asleep after the live stream and winding down at about 4 a.m., which was great to hear my daughter wake me up 2 hours later. And then finally get a little bit back to sleep, whatever. But at 9 a.m., David Crowley formally accepted the nomination with a brief speech and a press conference at the Sherman Phoenix in the city of Milwaukee on Milwaukee's north side. It was a very Milwaukee event. A lot of local elected officials were there. And it was, everybody was tired. Everybody was talking about, oh, how many hours did you get last night? Oh, 3. I got, whatever. So
Everybody's
people were
getting
just
old for this shit, huh?
everybody's like Kreitlow and getting with the Danny Glover line. I'm getting too old for
Amen.
this shit. But I thought Crowley delivered a really terrific speech at that event. I thought he, it just summed up so much about what had been happening with him and his campaign, and just like the arc of what happened. The line I've been using is "Comeback Crowley" for the last bit here, and he talked about coming back, talking about wanting to come together, and just talked about he acknowledged Francesca Hong and her remarkable campaign, acknowledged the other candidates too, and said some really terrific things. I'm pulling up the transcript here that I worked out to take a look at, and I just thought that it really met the moment. And I think just being at the Sherman Phoenix was a really which was quite the decision for a location for this too, because it's the phoenix rising from the ashes. The metaphor is not subtle there, right? It was a place that was grown out of a period of civil unrest that happened in Milwaukee, and they a building that was damaged in some of the rioting that happened following a police shooting there. But like so many community people came together and built this place and built it back up from the ground up. And, it's been an incubator and home for many small businesses over, really the past decade in Milwaukee. It's really become a beacon of hope in a lot of ways. And I think, Crowley's campaign coming from where he was literally dropping out of the race and coming back, it just the metaphor is not subtle, and the comeback was just remarkable, and the fact that he was able to pull this off was really something.
Let's talk about the result for a moment, because I have to say the first wave of results that came in, they now in hindsight struck me very much like 2010, when I ultimately lost my state Senate seat, and I fell behind early, and I thought, well, there's still time to catch up, and instead just kind of trailed pretty much the whole evening. And I saw that happening with Francesca Hong. There was this brief period where she took the lead very late, and you could hear the cheers from the Hong party, but then Crowley again crept back in front and almost went wire to wire in terms of finishing ahead 39.5% to 39%. But that was it. And Crowley was the winner. So, Kate, you get to be the expert first. What happened? How did Crowley win? How did Francesca Hong lose?
I mean, I think Francesca Hong, everybody talks about how were the polls so off, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this. It's like everybody was reporting on the gap and how far ahead she was, but I think the actual result ended up being pretty on par with where she was polling at. It's just like Crowley pretty much ate up every single last one of those undecided votes. That was also a really big piece of the pie until the last week. I think it's a couple things. I think it was, some of the media coming out that scared people. I think also that would have happened regardless, because I think some people like really loved her campaign, really loved her. And then like, as it got closer, we're just like, maybe reality was setting in and they were looking at things again. And then I also think, at least speaking for myself, I clearly underestimated still the power that Tony Evers has around this state. And we did see them going everywhere, but I'm sure he was working hard behind the scenes too, calling everybody. Every event I've been at with the governor, there are like any activists that are there or anything are always just so complimentary about how wonderful he is to work with and how much he and his team do for them behind the scenes. And I think that's a lot of stuff that we don't always like see online, but he's that helped. He made a big bet and it paid off. And I think It almost felt reminiscent of 2024 to me, because just right away I like had that feeling. I'm like, oh, we weren't expecting him to be even like that competitive, let alone ahead. And so I think like I just had a feeling pretty early, but yeah, it did go late, and that's Wisconsin, right?
That's right. They're always nail biters. Dan, how do you explain it? What happened in terms of how did David win or how did Francesca Hong lose?
Yeah, I think, I mean, so many things had to happen the way that they had to happen in order for Crowley to be in a position to have this nail biter of an election night victory. And, I was talking to some folks with his campaign and whatever else on the day of, and they were saying, like, all the things that needed to happen did kind of happen. They needed to get the Tony Evers endorsement. They needed to, consolidate some of the support from unions. I do wonder how much Mandela Barnes getting out of the race helped Crowley specifically. All of these different things that had to line up exactly the way that it did ultimately did line up the way that it did. And you're right, the polling showed Francesca Hong at that 40% number pretty consistently.
Even
yeah.
Joel and Kelda staying in the race, like, do you think that ultimately helped Crowley?
Kelda's did.
That's a great question.
I was going to ask who's the biggest spoiler in this, and if you're Francesca Hong, it's Kelda Royce because of her strong numbers relative to Francesca's in Dane County, and it was just enough. Had Kelda either dropped out sooner or endorsed her, but you can play what ifs all day. What if Mandela Barnes had stayed in and said, whatever that report is, don't worry about it. I'm in it. Where would he have drawn his support from? But I at the moment, I would make the argument that Kelda staying in the race was the ultimate difference maker. Not to take anything away from Tony Evers, David Crowley, or anybody else, but if you're going to say what one factor can you really point to, I'd have that one on the list.
I agree. I was talking to folks the election day too. Do you think Kelda Roy staying in the race takes votes from Francesca Hong or takes votes from David Crowley in sort of like another, consolidating a non-Hong option in the race? And I think because of the Dane County factor in particular, so she got roughly 7.5% statewide, but 11% in Dane County. And I think, the few thousand votes that represented, that was the margin. At the same time, I think Joel Brennan staying in the race also hurt Crowley. I think a lot of his supporters would have gone straight to Crowley if he had dropped out in the final stages as well.
How many votes did he end up with?
Total?
Yeah.
He ended up with 37,000 votes total.
Yeah, which is
in front of me.
Yeah, that's a big chunk.
And if I haven't done the math for a while here, but it was something like 63,000 votes went to candidates who were no longer in the race at that point.
Yeah, I think a little more than that, but yeah.
And that's just how it is. I've heard from a lot of people saying they learned their lesson. If there's a primary, they're going to wait a little longer next time. But I've also seen some people kind of come in for Kelda or whatever. And I just, this is not a Jill Stein scenario. This is a primary. Everybody who ran made commitments to their communities and had every right to stay in the race. If it was needed that they needed to drop out, then that's on the candidate or the candidate's team to try to like lobby that behind the scenes. And ultimately the cards fell where they did. And it's not on anybody. It's just how people voted.
Here's where Republicans roll tape on this, because you're about to be able to say I told you so on something. People were very upset when Republicans narrowed the early voting window to 2 weeks. I forget what the old window was, 5 or 6 weeks, something like that. In Minnesota, it's ridiculously long. And there is a case to be made for a long window of early voting, travel, military service, everything else, especially for a general. But in a primary where you have candidates dropping out all the time, suddenly a 2-week window, I'm not going to say it's too generous, but it really is a case of maybe you don't vote 2 weeks out. Maybe have that window if you really want to cast a ballot. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of really early voting the next time there's any kind of a crowded primary like this because of what we saw with candidates coming and going. I don't know, Dan. Should we have a different size window for the primary versus the general, or do we actually give Republicans credit that a 2-week window is the Goldilocks just right size?
I think there are a number of systemic issues that we could look at when it comes to primaries.
Yeah.
I think the being able to spoil your ballot if your candidate dropped out, I think should be an option. I think we should examine that. I know our friend Kristen Bry talked about ranked choice voting as being an option for a primary. I like that too, or just like the top 2 candidate runoff that just really have that head to head. I think that's worth considering as well. But I think those are all, those are all bridges we can cross at a later date. I do want to make another point here. We zoomed past it a little bit, but I think I've got to give some credit to Tony Evers here because not only like really sticking his neck out and going all in on Crowley in this final stretch. I was at the Cooperage in Milwaukee for their election eve rally. Clearly they had all been all over the state today. This was the last event, so there was like a little bit of that type of energy to it. But he really went all out to go in for Crowley, and I think we got to give him credit for trusting his instincts and picking Crowley of the other potential options in the field here too, because I think he picked the right candidate. I think it would have been a mistake to pick Mandela Barnes or Kelda Royce or some of these other candidates. He picked the right person at the right time and went absolutely all in, and it worked. It was a Hail Mary. We talked about some of the polling being wrong, but I looked back at that Marquette poll that I did a deep dive analysis of in the last week of July, and there were the breadcrumbs there in that poll suggesting that there is and I wrote it in my piece, that there is a non-zero chance that this could actually work. And everybody's like, why didn't he pick this candidate? Why didn't he pick that candidate? Why is he doing this now? Why is he jumping into this? It was there. It was the voters over the age of 60. It was the moderate undecideds. It was the people who liked Tony Evers. The moderates had like a +22 favorability rating for Evers, and he's on, doing events with Crowley in every local TV market had a Tony Evers earned media event that was happening that day. They figured it out and they did it, and it was messy and it was ridiculous at times, but I think picking Crowley was the right move, and going all out was just really remarkable. And I think about that I will be thinking about that Cooperage event for a long time, where you had all of the Milwaukee area kind of next generation wave of politicians like Marceli Nicholson and Cavalier Johnson and Jose Perez, and then Gwen Moore coming up on stage and being like, hey, I know you may have heard of me, but I am the congresswoman from Milwaukee. And as I drove to the Sherman Phoenix yesterday morning along 35th Street on the north side of Milwaukee, it was a David Crowley sign and a Gwen Moore sign in every front yard.
Sure.
So that certainly mattered.
So,
and then,
and can we talk a little bit about too that John Johnson had pulled up that map of Milwaukee for a bit. I don't know where that netted out, but showing the difference in votes of where Crowley was getting the Milwaukee vote versus where it was Francesca Hong. I think that was really insightful and is important for people to understand too.
I hear you talking about Tony Evers, the strategist, the tactician, and now I'm going to get his people all mad at me, but there's a lot to be said for Tony Evers, the yard sign. And what I mean by that is up here in rural Wisconsin, rural signs are like everything because they are affirmation. Tommy Thompson tells the story about how Donald Trump was dead in the water in Wisconsin in 2016 at the start of summer. And later on, he says, you got to get out here. There's nothing but Trump signs out in the rural areas because far too many Madison Democrats still have that cliche of yard signs don't vote, lawn signs don't vote. Bullshit. They are affirmation from your neighbors that say, I'm vouching for this guy. And suddenly Donald Trump was okay to support. Similarly, it's not that a lot of people got a call from Tony Evers. They didn't hear a speech from Tony Evers. They simply saw him there. And that was the yard sign for them. I'm like, that's a very crowded field. I don't know who to support for. Oh, there's Tony next to that guy that I don't know. Works for me. I'm going to take it. So, he did all those things, but the symbolism, just the visual cannot be denied of, Tony Evers' impact. on this race.
Yeah, and people still trust him, right? He has favorable ratings. They know him. You know, it's a known entity, and we know that that makes people feel comfortable when voting. So while he's not like, it's almost, I mean, he added the incumbent factor by going around and campaigning with him.
Right. And I think it allowed Crowley for people who didn't know him, and that was like one of my primary criticisms of his campaign throughout, is that people in southeastern Wisconsin, Milwaukee County, know him and like him, but I just didn't know how many people even knew him, much less had an opinion on him in other parts of the state. And being able to campaign with Governor Tony Evers allowed him to just kind of be, it was a noun, a verb, and Tony Evers in a lot of his, campaign messaging in places that didn't know him. But also, I think, David Crowley getting out and meeting people. We all have had the opportunity to talk with the county executive. He's going to win you over in the room. Like, he's a very likable, personable guy. And so he finally got the opportunity to do that. And I just like, what if he had been campaigning like this the whole time? Would he have been the winner all the way? But
that's a great point. Yes. Now, I don't want to leave the Milwaukee part of it yet because of the unity brunch question that I kicked off by asking David Crowley about basically the northwestern half of Wisconsin, where he's still introducing himself. He had to do that to Democratic primary voters. Now he's got to do it all over again to a whole lot of voters out around here that were not paying attention, frankly, because they weren't going to vote in the Democratic primary, but they're going to vote in the general. And I said, look, I'm driving from Madison yesterday up to Serona in Washburn County to cover an event. And they've got a congressman up there, Tom Tiffany, who is already going full guns blazing on big bad Milwaukee and all of the things that are wrong with it. And what are you going to tell people to win you over about your record as Milwaukee County executive? How does that translate into being chief executive of a state? And he gave a very good answer about, balancing the budgets, the property tax increases, the deal that he worked out with the legislature that didn't just increase state shared revenue to Milwaukee, but to basically every municipality in the state. Dan, he's got one signature legislative achievement that's going to get him in the door, metaphorically, with a lot of undecided voters across the rest of Wisconsin.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, please. Tell us more, Dan.
about
what did they? Is it Act 12? Is that what? Yeah. And again, we're trying to get past the Act numbers.
I know Kate loves when we bring up the Act.
I know.
That's why I'm like, I don't know. I've heard him say Act 12 a lot, and then I heard you say this, and I don't know that they're the same thing.
Yeah, so it's the shared revenue and sales tax bill that passed in 2023. Probably the most significant piece of legislation passed in Tony Evers' second term, outside of the state budget or something like that. But this was a way to rewire the shared revenue formula in the state in a way that brought more dollars back to local government. And however, there were certain stipulations on how Milwaukee needed to spend it. But at the end of the day, this brought millions of dollars back from the state to local communities and changed the way that local budgeting is going to happen going forward in perpetuity. And Crowley has talked about, like, this funding formula has been there for 100 years. I don't know how many other businesses run the same way that they did 100 years ago. So it was about updating that funding formula. It was bringing more money back to counties and municipalities. And I think that is, and that helped every corner of the state. That helped every county, every municipality, every part of the state was helped by that. And the Milwaukee component was such a big piece of this because there was such a great need, because the Republican controlled state legislature, when Tom Tiffany was in the state legislature throughout the 2010s, defunded Milwaukee in budget after budget after budget. And so that is going to be a talking point if Mr. Tiffany is going to make budget issues in Milwaukee County a case here. The second column that I ever wrote at the Recombobulation area 7 years ago was out in Milwaukee about Milwaukee County's budget issues existing downstream from Republicans defunding the city. We wrote an award-winning series on Act 12 at the Recombobulation area in 2023. I was working with Marquette University professor Phil Rocco on that. It was a huge achievement. And the initial proposal from Tony Evers that I think David Crowley could use as a goal for expanding this even further went way further in the final dollar amounts than the Republicans ended up passing. So all this local government money, we're talking about like just the high level machinations of it. When you get down to it, what these dollars actually go to, they are funding police. It is funding the fire department. It is funding local road repairs. It is funding trash pickup. It is funding snow removal. It is funding local development projects. It is funding libraries. It is funding, the bus system in Milwaukee, the parks in all corners of the state. This is the real work of executive governing that needs to happen in the state. And David Crowley, as much as anyone in the state outside of the Capitol, did more to get that legislation done than just about anybody, and that is a huge notch in his favor.
Which makes it
these next few months
so ironic that Tom Tiffany is going to try to run on these issues. I mean, our friend Scott Ross tweeted it very well, very succinctly. Tom Tiffany voted for 5 state budgets in the when he was in the legislature before Congress. In each budget, Democrats tried to get more shared revenue for police and firefighters. Republicans voted every time to defund the police. Again, Scott Ross's tweet, and I'm watching the Tom Tiffany ads about, he's trying to paint this on Evers, like our schools are failing and blah, blah, blah. Dude, that was you. You were in the legislature when all these things were happening. So like you said, Dan, he's got this thing to run on that, Kate, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of local government officials who maybe hadn't endorsed Crowley up to this point, but are going to say, oh yeah, I remember that. That was a good thing.
Yeah, and I think the government officials will speak up about it, and I think Crowley should try to campaign on it. I'm like me as like with the marketing mind, I'm like trying to figure out a way to have that land with the normies without having to explain it so much, because people, I mean, we saw with the moratorium too, people just latch on to like the one word things or whatever. And we have to figure out a way to, the whole like defunding the police even, to like help people understand really how the funding formula works and how the budget process works. And every 2 years, the governor puts forth a budget and they go back and forth with the legislature. But there's no police line item in the state budget. Those are coming through the shared revenue formula. And then municipalities are making decisions on those budgets. And I think same thing with the data centers. I'm seeing a lot of criticism of David Crowley for being pro data center. And I do not think that's the case. And while the governor does have a role to play here in this conversation and moving this forward, I would just encourage folks to make sure you know what's going on your own city council, village board. A lot of the decisions for those data centers are happening actually at that local level. So, but it's a lot of explaining.
Dan, don't you enjoy hearing her spinning the wheels on whatever her next explainer video is going to be? That's either going to be a whiteboard or it's going to use the Monopoly money from the kids' games, she's going to do it. If you're not watching Motherhood
we
for
see
Goods
the idea,
Instagram,
and then when we see it in fruition, it's
better get on there before she does this next
magic.
video.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I do have some ideas coming.
Look at that.
Well, and I'm like, I'm struggling with seeing, I know everybody's algorithm is different. I am struggling with seeing people maybe not familiar with Crowley and calling him establishment or whatever, and then, which I don't think he is, and then, saying he's like a capitalist shill. And I'm just like, do you guys know his story and where he came from? And have you listened to an interview? Have you heard him speak? Because David Crowley grew up in poverty, not like the kind that many people can't imagine. It's not like, oh, my groceries are more expensive. It's like being evicted, going from house to house when he was younger, not knowing where they were going to live, parents that were struggling with addiction. I mean, at a time when affordability is the biggest thing anybody's talking about, do you think maybe he might understand a little bit about that? And that maybe there are more things that we could take from him to understand the true affordability. And maybe the things he's talking about don't resonate with everybody because your basic needs are already met. And maybe David Crowley knows something that you don't. And so I would just encourage people to listen to him on that. I think his background has very much shaped his values and who he is. And I cannot see him just like cutting deals to get rich. I don't think that's who David Crowley is.
But, just again, keep in mind that is exactly what Tom Tiffany will try to do it, because if you can plant these little seeds of doubt or whatever else you want to call the seeds that Tom Tiffany is going to plant. I was up in Washburn County last night, and Charlie Ray is the Democratic candidate for state Senate up in the 25th district, northwest corner of the state. And he spoke about, doing doors. And doors are still, enjoyable for a candidate by and large, but you run into a person every now and then. And he said he was starting to be surprised at how many times he'd get to a door and he'd be called a communist. And then he would say, well, what do you mean by that? And as the people would explain, it's government getting involved in business. And Charlie would explain how the Trump administration is actually the communist right now, because we now have taxpayer ownership of like 30 different corporations.
Yeah,
and they'd
that's
say
somehow missing from the socialism conversation.
Yeah, they say,
yes,
well, we don't
continue.
want to become Cuba. And he'd say, well, Cuba's going through these problems not because they're socialists, but because there's been a blockade for 60 years around it. And so people just hear communist or they hear Milwaukee crime, and they're going to hear so much of it thanks to the Elines and Diane Hendricks and all the other groups that are out there. You and I have been talking about what Crowley needs to say, but he needs to say it succinctly and a lot. And he's got to have, whether we like the system or not, a whole lot of outside money that's helping amplify that message. I guess the Democratic Governors Association started some ads yesterday. I hadn't seen them, but my wife said, there are these new ads and they are really good. And for her to say that is saying something that they're hitting Tiffany right away on all these issues.
It's all over my YouTube. Any ad that I've had over the past 24 hours has been a DGA Tiffany attack ad. So they got me targeted at least.
The cavalry is here.
The cavalry is here. There you go. And I saw the Crowley campaign released some numbers this morning saying that they had raised $1.5 million in the first day since winning the nomination. So that's pretty good too. Yes, so that's going to be a key part of what's going forward. But I want to go back to something you said, Kate, too, about the things that Crowley will need to do to win over, I think, what we can fairly characterize as the Hong supporters. Yeah. And I think when it comes to data centers, when it comes to like just the skepticism around, just kind of like centrist establishment politics, which again, I don't think really fits Crowley, but like I get that there are people who are Hong supporters who are concerned about that more broadly. And I do think those are valid concerns about the direction of the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party has not always covered itself in glory when it has come to those types of issues. And I think, Hong elevating, putting the working class first in her campaign. I think Crowley needs to do some work to make sure that he is letting people know that he is that type of candidate too, that he is a working class, has a working class background and can be a working class candidate as well. I think he's got to find the right answer on data centers. I'm not sure that he has found it just yet. I think, whether it's adopting a moratorium, whether it's advocating for some of the bills that have been bouncing around in the legislature. I know State Senator Jody Habermas-Sinekin from Ozaukee County and not far, part of Milwaukee County, I believe, had a great bill passed. Maybe he could, to make that part of his platform or something like that too. But he's going to have to find the right answer on data centers, on some of just like the corporate criticism that there is of that wing of the party more generally. And it has to go, and voucher schools too. Yeah. And I think he's going to have to not just do it through the personal story, which I think is going to be an important component of it, but it's going to have to be through policy too.
Yeah, this is getting kind of, go ahead, Kate.
Coming back to the voucher schools really quickly too, he is still very pro public education and fully funding our public schools. And so this is a more nuanced conversation too. It's very easy for people to just like look at it in a black and white and say, oh, he's a pro voucher. There's a system in place that is very flawed, but I actually was pretty surprised to see like a week before the election, Fran clarify that she wanted it totally sunsetted by 2030. I think my jaw actually kind of dropped because I was like, that's very soon. And I think, Milwaukee is where it is the biggest. It is where it started. It is where it's most complicated. And so again, I don't think he's like pro voucher, but he's trying to look at a solution that is very complicated and hopefully fixing that and putting some guardrails in without just like ripping it out and letting all those families and kids fall through the cracks.
The concern, though, by public education advocates is that they are still furious at the deal that Governor Evers cut with Republicans that did shift some more funding to public schools, but at the same time put a lot more money into the voucher systems. They felt stabbed in the back by that. And they're going to want to see from Crowley something that really emphasizes the fully fund schools and not just the, okay, we'll start to dwindle this down, but every time that you're not killing it, it has a chance to come back and rise up again the next time Republicans take over. So, thanks to that Evers deal, not this last one, but the one a state budget ago, there's a lot of folks in education that are really going to want to see David Crowley prove something right away, especially if there is a trifecta.
And I will mention on that issue that the voucher issue, it plays differently in different parts of the state too. Right. And I think we saw that manifest in the state superintendent election from, was it 2025, I think, when it was Underly versus Brittany Kinzer. And Brittany Kinzer ran a pretty strong race, especially in southeastern Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, Waukesha, Racine, some of these counties that have some of the school choice and all of that. But Underly ran stronger in western Wisconsin and northern Wisconsin and the Fox Valley and other places like that. I think there are some interesting like local policies that are being implemented on that. I think the folks in Green Bay have this like transparency bill that they've passed that shows how much of your city budget is going to these voucher programs. I think that's a really smart thing that Crowley could pull into his platform as well. But you're right, that's going to be a tricky issue for sure.
And I think he should. Somebody had I saw their picture was like educators something, and
that would be our friend Chris Hambuck Boyle from the Wisconsin Public Education Network. And like she says, we're reasonable people, but we want to be part of the process. And they felt cut out last time around. And
I would encourage, I know Crowley running with Evers' support, he will get a lot of his network and a lot of his kind of like ideas on things. But I really would strongly encourage Crowley and his team to continue to speak with more people outside of that. Like he can't just like copy and paste the Evers plan. I think he needs to take it farther. And education is one area that, the educators and it was not a perfect 2 terms for them. And so I do think that David Crowley should be going around the state meeting with those people to better understand where they're at and how he can put forth solutions that are better than what Evers had done for them.
The good news for that then is that David Crowley, over and over again in that interview I did with him, over and over again in the interviews I've done with him over the years, over and over again, and his record as Milwaukee County, he is a consensus builder. He is not somebody he wants everybody to come to the table to figure this out. He does not want to govern by edict or whatever it might be. He wants people to come together to figure out solutions. And you saw that, in those comments that in his speech there too. He was saying that, he wants Republicans, independents, Democrats, everybody who believes in democracy to come together and do better for the state. And I think one of my criticisms, at least, of the Tony Evers experience is that he could have done better working with the legislature, especially in the last couple of years, since there's been, of the closer margins with new maps. I think
I don't know if people realize that a lot of legislators don't have close access to him.
Right. And I think this is a way that Crowley can say, like, yo, how are you different from Tony Evers? He's like, I want more people to come to the table. This is what I've done in Milwaukee County. This is what I've done my whole career. I think it is backed up by his record, and it is what people want. Let's go to Tom Tiffany's campaign for a moment, because again, we know what the playbook is going to be: big bad Milwaukee, culture wars, you should hate your government, and things like that. But there's also the orange elephant in the room, and his answer yesterday, when I think it was Matt Smith asked, like, will you welcome President Trump to Wisconsin?
Oh gosh, he gave the answer you give if you don't have candy for trick-or-treaters. And I'm just going to close the windows. I'm going to close the curtains, turn off the lights. I can't hear the doorbell. There's no red carpet that's being rolled out. Everything in Tom Tiffany's eyes said to the White House, please don't want to come here. Please don't want to come here. But he would welcome Trump if he came, because he really wouldn't have a choice. But he's not really thinking that Trump is going to be much of a help in the fall, is he?
He's had months to prepare for these questions.
I know, that's like the number one question you're gonna get.
Right.
And he was not ready for that one.
And
he was pretty shaken up in
it,
general.
yeah.
All his responses, he looked like very,
because he'd prepped everything for Francesca Hong. He had all these great communist lines and things that they had to toss in the wastebasket, and they got nothing to launch this time around.
He was stumbling around a lot in those answers, which was fun to watch for me personally.
Yeah, and again, we know so much of his support now is currently coming from 3 billionaires, through loopholes that come through the Republican Party. And I think he's just waiting for new marching orders, if I'm going to be frank.
The other thing that's, I think, very interesting about his platform and in his message specifically is his message on healthcare affordability, which we've now seen it in 2 ads. It was in the one with all his family around and like his sisters and brothers and mom. And one of the sisters is like, well, what are you going to do about healthcare? And he's like, I'll make it more transparent. And then I just saw another ad from him that I think came out yesterday. And he goes through his 3 things that are most important. And the second one is like, and I'll make healthcare costs more transparent. And I'm like, that's the plan?
That's
to
it.
To like have line items on the bill. I mean, that's shocking to me that like that is the winning message there. That has nothing. He's not even trying to tell people that he'll bring down their healthcare costs.
Yeah. Is he going to be transparent about how he's raised people's healthcare costs? Like, here it is. Here's the transparency. I have made this worse for you. Is that the argument? Yeah, I don't know.
I voted for the big, beautiful bill that's cutting tons of Medicaid money, that is closing rural hospitals. And it's just, I'm so used to Republicans lying, I guess, that I'm shocked that like he didn't even try to make that sound a little bit better. It sounds bad to me, I feel like. I guess we'll see.
We will see that he really hopes that the Republican base is still as large as they wish it would be. I'm not sure that that's the case, given Trump's record and everything recently. However, you have to keep the 7th congressional district in mind. And I really was thinking that 7th congressional district Republican voters failed a test on Tuesday by going along with a 26-year-old with no record whatsoever. And because he's Sean Duffy's son-in-law, well, that's good enough for me. So let's get Michael Alfonso in there. And I thought they'd failed a test. But then last night, as I was in Rice Lake having dinner and I saw some Alfonso signs, it hit me. This is actually what they want. They want the aristocracy. They are monarchists. They want Trump to be king or dictator or whatever. And remember how the Supreme Court it used to be the pinnacle of a career. It went to people who were older, wiser. They had served. What have Republicans done since at least Clarence Thomas, Netton, and Scalia? They look for the youngest arch conservative possible and then try to keep them installed in there for 20, 30 years. That's exactly what they want here with Michael Alfonso. He matters nothing to them. But he's young and he's willing to just be a rubber stamp. And that's what they're going to do. And that's, the Republican voters have become very used to this playbook by now. They don't want to reward experience and wisdom. They just want to win. So if you can't get Charlie Kirk in there, then get one of the people that is a Charlie Kirk wannabe. And that's going to be, what Tiffany hopes works in northern Wisconsin. I don't know if it'll work everywhere else.
That's interesting. They actually like the Nepo baby of it all.
It's like there's like this neo-feudalism happening with the Trump administration, right?
Yeah.
Every decision about, that there's so many of these like corrupt internal decisions about who they're giving government contracts to, who they're like actually sending federal relief to, like in Milwaukee County, like they the flood relief that David Crowley and his administration in Milwaukee County applied for a year ago from the generational flooding we saw last August that the Trump administration denied. So it's just like this: if you don't kiss the king's ring, then you're not gonna get the funding or whatever it is. And it's just like, yeah, this is just such a ridiculous candidate and rise for Michael Alfonso. Just this like raft of transportation industry lobbyist cash that has flown to his campaign too. It's yeah.
And there's all the Zooms they're doing together, like the media interviews where Sean Duffy is sitting right next to him.
Right there.
It's actually, yeah. I mean, Kristin was making fun of Crowley for like the take your dad to work week, but this is like on another level.
It is. By the way, he will be facing Democrat Fred Clark, the former state assembly rep. And again, the 7th is fairly solidly Republican, but with a Trump Nepo baby running against, again, an experienced older lawmaker who knows how to actually get things done. Now, again, I'm not going to those prediction markets. Kristin, I know you're listening. I'm not going over to the prediction markets, but I still wouldn't vote against Fred Clark if this turns out to be that big of a wave year. That is very possible that Dave Obey's district turns blue once again. Meanwhile, in the 3rd congressional district, Derek Van Orden now knows he's going up against Rebecca Cooke again, who did win solidly against Emily Berge. And Emily Berge, much like some of Francesca Hong supporters, they are not happy at all with what appears to be establishment influence, a thumb on the scales, whatever you want to call it. I think that Emily Berge supporters, more than Francesca Hong supporters, will dust themselves off and show up strong trying to get a win in November. But that one was a tough pill for voters there. Same goes for the primary in the 17th state Senate district, where again, the party preferred Representative Jenna Jacobson defeated child care provider Corrine Hendrickson and Lisa White. You had an 8th congressional district primary that was 3-way and contentious. Assembly District 76 around Madison as well. But Dan, I think as you go do your 99 assembly races and all the Senate races and everything that comes from it, do you see any serious signs in there of left of center voters actually staying home in November?
No, I don't, because I think, look, we'll give some people some time to recombobulate. I get it. Losing a primary is a discombobulating experience. Let everybody take a beat, collect themselves, piece everything back together, and then we'll make it off to our destination, just like the actual recombobulation area. I think some of these candidates who did win are going to, of course, just like any primary, like you're going to have to reach out and consolidate and have the unity tour, go beyond the unity tours of it all, and really bring folks in and have honest conversations about like what you need to do going forward. Kate, I know you talked to Rebecca Cooke on your show earlier this week. I think she's a terrific candidate. I'm really excited to see what this general election run is going to look like for her. Again, take a little time with the Berge supporters or the Hong supporters or whoever it might be, but I think we can all align on similar goals, in a couple of weeks once we get everything pieced back together and I think. Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
I saw Alicia Sanders in here, and I've heard this a lot from people frustrated that Hong supporters or maybe Berge supporters, if they're seeing people out there saying they're not going to vote, I'm beyond disappointed. Yeah, I hear you, and I get disappointed when I read them too, and then I, just have to remind, remember your first political heartbreak. There's what these candidates did that made these people feel very seen for the first time and very involved in something is like really big deal. And I do think they'll come around. I think, like Dan said, we just have to give them some time and just continue to have conversations and welcome them in. And I think we have all the best people running. And also I think back to that Giannis press conference from a couple of years ago a lot, where the reporter asked him, after the season was done and they didn't make the playoffs or something, he was like, do you see this season as a failure? And it is just like the most masterclass answer anybody has ever given, because he's talking about sports, but he's not really. And he's like, there's no failure in sports. Everything is steps to success. Just because you don't win doesn't mean you've lost it all. And I think these candidates like Emily Berge and Corinne Hendrickson and Francesca Hong, who ran more progressive campaigns, they didn't just lose and are walking away. They have planted seeds in so many people. They pushed the more establishment candidates to be better. They are going to continue pushing them. There is all this other stuff that adds up when people like that run. And so it's not just a loss. It actually, we might not see it yet, but it is building towards having more candidates like that win in the future.
You're absolutely right. And I think Francesca Hong ran such a phenomenal campaign. Nobody thought that she would be a Democratic socialist getting more than 300,000 votes in a primary when this started in September. Unbelievable. I'm so impressed by the campaign that she ran. She was a long shot who became a genuine contender. And I think every campaign in Wisconsin going forward is going to be learning from the wild card who out-hustled the field. And every campaign going forward is going to take something from Francesca Hong. She has absolutely pointed the way forward to do things differently. And so if David Crowley can incorporate some of her, ground game, field organizing, digital strategy, some of that, every candidate who runs a primary or runs a statewide election is going to learn something from, this island of misfit toys that Francesca Hong was working with on this campaign. I'm just blown away by being so impressed by this. Yes, it came up short. But I think, there's this quote from, so I interviewed Tammy Baldwin a couple of years ago during the campaign, and she said this quote kind of as an aside, and I just love it. And I literally have it pinned to my desktop background on my laptop, and it says, "Never mistake progress for victory." Ooh. And I think it works the other way too, a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Never mistake victory for progress, because I think because there is this element of what has happened in, whether it's, Berge's campaign or certainly with Francesca Hong's campaign, that, maybe they came up short, but they so far outperformed expectations. And we are going to learn so much from what they did doing things differently, that she has absolutely changed the game for Wisconsin politics forever because of that.
The other thing I want to just say about Fran really quickly is she clearly, what I love about her as a politician too, is you can see her editing and iterating in real time. It is crazy to see how she sees something and she sees like the feedback or what didn't go right. And then you see her immediately kind of start to tweak that and getting better. There's a lot of politicians who I just don't see growth from cycle to cycle. And then they're running again. It's like, this feels the same. If Francesca Hong wants to run again, I think people should watch out, because I think she could be a powerhouse in 2 years and learn really quickly how to get very sophisticated with the media.
Well, you just took us to our next topic, and I know that the general election is in 82 days, but welcome now to handicapping the 2028 U.S. Senate primary in Wisconsin for Democrats.
Oh,
we've got Francesca Hong and Mandela Barnes and Missy Hughes. And
I'm not ready.
Oh, you're not? Okay. All right.
All right. What, you've got some thoughts. I'll let you go then here.
No, I've run the gamut on my topics as well. So I'll close with this. Do we get a break for a little while, like from now till Labor Day, or are we going to need to be back here in 7 or 14 days and say, wow, a lot has happened in this race? Because remember what we were doing right before 4th of July? We were like, oh, this race is so quiet. When's something going to happen? And then all hell broke loose. Do we get a break?
Probably not.
No, but I think we get to have some fun now, just dunking on people like Tom Tiffany and DVO, and we can go back to complaining, or not even complaining, pointing out Republicans and their incompetencies.
Let's just do that for 2 seconds. Derek Van Orden resorting to AI slop as a tactic.
He is
disgusting.
I think he absolutely knows he's going to lose. There's got to be internal polling because there's no way, you would think Mike Johnson would be like, hey, bruh, Can you not? Like, he's just off his rocker. I think he's just going out in a blaze of glory. So,
Oh, look at
When
this.
he's doing election denier stuff after like about Milwaukee County and all of that, all of the typical like Milwaukee Central count, blah blah blah. Obviously they got to get better. We had some thoughts on that on the live stream, did we not?
Yeah, yes you did.
but at the same time, like how is this not a story the next day? That like I didn't even see the comments until something popped up in my Twitter feed. Derek Van Orden's going like full on election denier that like they stole this from Hong. Like
it's not even like a subtle
and
nod.
no one is writing about this at all. No stories about this anywhere.
I think there will. I think some of us needed to catch up on our sleep, but
maybe
it will be there. But I was going to point out, Dylan, right off the state treasurer primary, is not taking his marbles and going home. He says you can't take a break. It's go time. Thank you for that. And Alicia as well says break. No, you don't get a break. No so it's go time.
Yeah,
so
she's
we'll be here.
We got a Shay Sortwell to go up against. And Dylan, you are so good at making videos and making people pay attention. Maybe come on over to the dark side and be a political content creator with me.
There we go. We have laid the groundwork. All right. Well, Kristin's not here to play fun with music history, so I'm just going to tell you really quickly. On this day in 1964, the Supremes recorded Baby Love at Motown. On this day in 1966, so 60 years ago today, the number one song was Summer in the City by the Lovin' Spoonful, which is still a great signature summer song. And one for Kate. On this day 4 years ago, Beyonce's album Renaissance went to number one, making her the first female solo artist to have her first 7 albums go to number one on the album chart. She then did it again with Cowboy Carter. So 8 studio albums in a row going to number one. Please don't ask me to name the other 6. I got nothing there, Kate. I don't know if you do or not.
So good. I appreciate that. That was a good one. I appreciate you throwing that in there for me.
All right.
I gotta go see About a Butter Cow.
Yeah, enjoy the Iowa Fair. Can't wait to hear more about it.
We're running out of sentences. That's a new one.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys, very much. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
There's Kate Duffy from Motherhood for Good. There's Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation Area. And I'm going to pop their stuff up here one more time because you need to follow the Recombobulation Area. Go to the recombobulationarea.com. And Kate, of course, Motherhood for Good. The best one to see there is on Instagram. Go to Motherhood for Good there and follow her stuff. And, of course, as I mentioned, I've got a weekly newsletter coming out tonight. Would love to have you as a subscriber. Head to UpNorthNewsWI.com. That's going to do it for me. For those of you who follow my live stream, I'll see you back here tomorrow morning, maybe with Dr. Kristin Lyerly for another beautiful morning. Have a great day.